Good evening, and thank you for joining me at Music Today. This is Keitaro Harada. The concept of the show is to bring in an artist each episode and have a conversation with the artist about a performance we will all watch and listen together. The live component is very important because I encourage all viewers to comment and ask questions to the artist. Don't be shy and please do comment. The idea of this show came about when COVID-19 hit, and I wanted a platform to keep the music going for our fans. Music Today is a bilingual show. The live streams during your evening will be in English, and the shows that broadcast during your morning time will be in Japanese for the fans in Japan. If you want to improve on your Japanese skills, you're more than welcome to watch the Japanese interviews too. After the live show, you can click on the subtitle button somewhere around here and listen to it in Japanese and read it in English. Without further ado, I'd like to bring in our guest for tonight. Since we cannot hear you applaud, please use the comments section to type in clap, 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 or you can use clapping emojis so we know that you're there and supporting the program and excited for our guest. Please welcome our special guest, Maestro Joshua Gersen.
Hey there. How you doing? Good to see you.
All right. Very well. Good to see you too. Where are you quarantining?
Actually, currently right now, I'm up in Connecticut, up in Fairfield, Connecticut. I started the quarantine in New York City in Manhattan, where I live, and it was rough being there for a while. So we were there for a couple months, and my parents actually live an hour north of the city in Connecticut. So my girlfriend and I came up here a couple weeks ago, and we're going to spend some quarantine time here now as well to get away from the city for a while.
Yeah, well, and enjoying the nature, I'm sure, and away from the craziness of New York City. So I'm glad that you're safe and you're with your family. I'm sure your parents are loving that you're home.
They are thrilled that we were finally able. They were cooped up here for a while themselves, so they were. Once we were quarantined long enough, they were happy to have us come up and spend some time with them. So we're happy to be here too.
Fantastic. Well, for our viewers, I wanted to share just a little bit of how JD and I have met. And
either way is fine.
Yeah. I was like, I see on my screen Joshua, and I've never called you Joshua. So
I know. Professionally, it's always Joshua, but I have to say my friends call me JD.
So here's a photo back in 2013, and I don't look that different, but you definitely look different.
That's me I hadn't shaved, I guess, well enough, but that is me pre-beard. Yeah. I was going to say you're one of the last people to see me because I think I grew my beard. That's the summer after this was taken 6 or 7 years ago, and I haven't shaved it since. So
this is
it grew in a lot grayer than I expected it to.
Well, you look good there. You look definitely younger there. We were all younger. It's like 7 years ago, in 2013, I think, when we had the League of American Orchestras conductor preview in Jacksonville, Florida. But this is very. You look great with your beard, though. I like.
Well, thank you. And you barely look much older today, so
I don't know. I don't know what's happening with my genes, but I get younger. No, I don't get younger. That's totally not true. I just wanted to recognize some hellos that are Lion Jameson from Savannah. Thank you, Phyllis from Savannah, anxiously waiting, and some applause on the YouTube side, and more applause on the YouTube side. So if you're watching, please send us a comment. Let's go with our music. Ravel Le Tombeau de Couperin. Tell us about this music.
Well, it's a piece that I've found myself thinking a lot about recently. First of all, it's a piece that I love, and I was trying to think. I think it's the piece that I've conducted in performance more than any other piece.
No kidding.
Just by happenstance, really. I don't know. It's easy to program, and it's wonderful, and it works so many different ways. I think that's part of it. But I've just been thinking about it a lot. It's a piece that Ravel wrote during World War I, and we don't have a lot of music actually written during the war for obvious reasons. And I just find myself thinking about it a lot, just in that it was written during a very dark and uncertain time in history. Certainly in Ravel's life. And, obviously the First World War, I think, was more horrific in more dramatic ways. But I think there are a lot of parallels to sort of a lot of the experiences we're going through right now. Again, it was a real period of uncertainty. I think, nobody knew when the war was going to end, how it was going to end, what things were going to look like once it was over. I think, but the one thing that everyone did know in the moment was that life was never going to quite be the same as it was before. So this was a piece that he wrote during the war, and it was written, it's called La Tombeau de Couperin, and it was written on the surface as an homage to Couperin, the French Baroque style. Each movement of the piece, it was originally a solo piano piece that he orchestrated later, is inspired by a French Baroque dance. But it's more poignantly, each movement is dedicated to a friend that he lost in the war. And it's really more an homage to the past, and sort of the past that's now gone. I think the Ravel's life, the pre-war Europe that no longer now exists. And it is, it's strange in that he was actually criticized that the piece didn't sound sad enough for it being a memorial and a war memorial. And he quoted some effect saying that, the dead are sad enough, and, we don't need to pile on. And it is generally a major work. Most of all the movements are in some sort of major key. There are minor moments, but I think it does feel incredibly, there's a sadness to it all, a wistfulness to the whole piece that I think really permeates all the way through, that I certainly feel when I hear it. It really is melancholy in a weird and a very simple way. And I think, that really comes across to me when I hear it. And hopefully
Seems like a common denominator with Ravel, because he also wrote the Pavane for the Dead Princess, where the title has nothing to do with the music.
Of course, and it's interesting because that was one of his first hits, as if you will. He wrote much earlier, and it is in that same vein. But then you look at sort of the more sort of decadent, extravagant pieces that he wrote before the war, and a lot of other composers were writing, the Daphnis and Chloe's and and all the Rite of Springs and the Salome, all these big pieces that were being written in the early 20th century. And, music obviously changed so much after that, after the war. It was really pared down, was much more simple, more stark. You're using much smaller orchestras for many different reasons. And so it really is kind of an inflection point in musical history, not as, obvious or loud an inflection point as, say, a Rite of Spring, but at the same time, it really is sort of a focal point of where music really did change, I think, for a lot of composers.
I'm always very thankful for Ravel and the way he orchestrated for the large orchestra, because, this is a composer who just knew the color palettes of the capabilities of what the instruments can do. And as a conductor, we're so lucky to be able to conduct Ravel.
Oh yeah, I love doing. It's interesting too, because I never felt as if I conducted Debussy well. I love it, but I never felt, for whatever reason, as if I did it justice. And Ravel, for whatever reason, I feel a much stronger connection to, and I've always really enjoyed working with, and I've always felt like I had a better understanding of it for whatever reason. And his, the orchestration is second to none. And in this piece, he uses a much smaller orchestra,
but still achieves. He still achieves an amazing color palette from a small ensemble, which is great.
I think you can argue that it takes even more skill to be able to orchestrate so well with smaller forces and less instruments at your disposal than it does when you have the whole symphony orchestra. So
it's
a remarkable piece. Yeah.
Most definitely. Before we go to the music, I want to recognize some hellos from Michael Thame and also Roger.
Roger.
Hi, Roger.
I haven't seen Roger in a while either.
Well, we conductors never get to see each other, so this is our life, but it is what it is. So let's listen to some Ravel.
Apologize for the video quality, but
no, it's fine.
This was my favorite performance of this piece, and did an incredible job.
It's so picturesque, his music.
And again, there's this sort of sense of everything just floating in the air. It's not even on the ground, all the way through the prelude. This piece is notoriously difficult for the wind players to especially the oboe.
Yes. These running lines of notes is really dramatic. It just continues, it continues like a train that doesn't stop.
All the way through. And it's very hard, especially with the violins when they're connecting these lines from section to section, to keep it smooth.
I feel like with Ravel, there's just a lot of swells that make total sense.
The way he marks his dynamics too, it's so specific, so well organized. If you really do it the way he marks it, it's incredible. Hopefully we did it close to the way he marked it.
Yay, bravo. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
My pleasure. They did a wonderful job with that. It's much, much harder than it probably seems. Maybe it does seem hard. I don't know. But it's
no, it is
very difficult for the orchestra.
Exactly.
It's easy for us, but it's difficult for them. Yeah.
I was just about to say for us it's not that difficult for the players, definitely. And then the thing about Ravel, I was just thinking how while listening, the swells, composers prior to Ravel, of course they use swells, but not as much as Ravel. And then I think from Ravel, the contemporary composers nowadays use that Ravel swell so much to show the gestures, and I could, he really, I think it came down from him.
In a lot of ways, yes. And I forget who would always talk about this, but a Ravel swell or hairpin is much different than, say, a Wagnerian hairpin or a Brahmsian hairpin, or there's something much more almost elegant about it in a way.
Yes,
as he very much was. That sort of creates that effect, and then a lot of it's the way he orchestrates too, which is just so profoundly perfect.
Yes, most definitely. Well, we have a bunch of applauses, so thank you, everyone. So JD, let's talk a little bit about you. How were you introduced to music, and what was the turning point of your life to decide that this is the way we're gonna go with your life?
I was quite strange in that I got into this whole thing when I was very, very young.
Okay.
My parents could probably give you the more truer version of the story than I could, because I was 2-3 years old and I don't really remember a lot of it. But I was just always listening to orchestral music since I was a kid. I was very little. And so, it was almost always the natural thing that I wanted to be. The conductor is the person more than anybody who is spending all this time studying, learning about, thinking about these pieces. So it was something that I always, since I was very, very young, I mean, I want to say 5 or 6 years old, that I sort of had been working towards. It took me a while to get there. And had I known everything that was involved in being a conductor back then, maybe I would have thought about it a little bit longer. But it's something that I've really always wanted to do since before I can remember. So I don't know if there was a turning point, because if there was, again, I was too young to remember it.
Were your parents musicians?
No, not really. My parents, not at all. I had a grandmother who was a singer, and she only sung until she got married and then retired, in the 50s. I think that's probably where the interest came from. And my my dad's side of the family, they were music lovers and
Mm-hmm.
you know, always went to the opera and the symphony.
Mm,
And that's how I was definitely exposed to it when I was so young.
I see.
And how they were able to find that I had some sort of affinity for it. But
What
they weren't professional musicians at all.
what instrument did you start off with?
I started on piano when I was 3 and then switched to violin a few years later. I think I was 6 or 7. So violin was my main instrument growing up through high school, but I knew I wasn't going anywhere of any monumental importance. As an instrumentalist, it's a good thing. So, you know, again, I obviously wanted to play instruments when I was younger, and to be a, you know, a intelligent conductor, one obviously has to understand how to play the instruments well, and you know, have to have that the musical skill of what it's like to actually perform and create, to understand how best to you know, inspire and work with other musicians.
Yeah.
But
I want to
yeah.
I want to know where that conducting bug came in. Like, do you feel like when you were very young, you knew that you're gonna hold the stick and be in front of a crowd, or where did that kind of transition?
Well, this will sound really superficial. I hope it doesn't. And I don't know if this is true, but I used to watch my parents recorded some orchestral concerts on PBS that they broadcast on video, and I used to watch those all the time. And I must have, you know, the conductor was the guy they showed on TV the most, so I must have you know, decided I wanted to be that person. You know, I don't know if that's true, but that must have been part of it. You know, that's
of
what
course,
I was seeing over and over again, and so, you know, that was, again, just always just being around and listening to. It was orchestral music more than anything, and I think that's why I was so driven and so interested in wanting to do this.
Did you have a favorite conductor growing up that you kind of looked up to?
When I was very young, it was Bernstein, because we were, you know, a Jewish family from New York. You know, he was in every way, you know, our hero, musically and in so many different ways. So as a young person, and I was very, very young. I was only 6 years old when he passed away. So he was never really alive during the time in which I never got to see him personally live or anything like that. But he was certainly our family influence. So.
When was the first time you actually stood in front of an ensemble, like an orchestra, let's just say, to conduct?
I was 10 years old.
Whoa!
I was 10. It was my youth orchestra in Connecticut growing up. One of my first conducting teachers was my youth orchestra conductor, and he gave me the chance to get up in a rehearsal, not in a performance yet. But
do you remember the piece that you conducted?
Yeah, it was the minuet from the Little G Minor Mozart Symphony.
Oh, that's so cool.
That was my first one. Yeah.
Did your conducting youth orchestra conductor take a video of it back then?
Oh yeah. Well, my parents definitely did. If he didn't, we have it somewhere. I'm sure they would be happy to find it for anybody who's curious. Yeah.
That's awesome. Starting at 10, you know, it's like Maestro Mazel route, right? Starting from that young.
Yeah, I don't know if I quite have the career that he had at that age, but yeah, I was younger than I probably should have been when I got started.
That's fantastic. And then, you know, the career path, you went from to New World, and then you had the New York Youth Symphony. And one of the common denominators that we have is that we spent quite some time at the youth orchestra level, being music director there. And for me, I just treasure those years because I was able to grow as a musician, as a person, but to be able to influence the young generation who not all of them will go into music, but some of them will go into music, and then many of them will appreciate music. Maybe they'll play a little bit in college, but then they become the adults that will be the ones that will be supporting the arts in the future. And for me, they will always come to youth orchestra rehearsal because they can be with friends that they can relate to very well, away from school. And so my youth orchestra experience was just fantastic. Tell us about New York Youth Symphony and what you've done there.
Honestly, I think you summed it up as best as I could. I mean, when people ask me about my time at the Youth Symphony, that's usually the same things I say. It was, yes, and definitely for me at that time, a great opportunity for me to grow, to be the music director of an ensemble and sort of learn how to handle that and all the decisions and issues that arise that you have to deal with. That and just developing repertoire and getting that experience to work with an ensemble regularly and really develop a rapport and relationship with the students and develop concepts long term. Those are all things that were very valuable for me in my development. But the most wonderful thing about it, I always say, is having been able to really watch so many young people mature before your eyes. I was there I did it for 5 years, I think, similar to the time that you spent. And, I had students who, when I started, were 12, 13 years old. And by the time I was done, they were graduating, going to college, and to sort of see them grow up before your eyes and to see them, find themselves and become themselves, and to hopefully feel that you had at least some kind of positive influence, during that time, was the most rewarding thing for me, hands down. And again, you had to see so many of them go off and do whatever they did, whether it was musical or something else, through school, and now even in their professional. I have students who are now playing in professional orchestras that were in the youth symphony.
Oh, that's awesome.
Many of them. And so to see that happen, to have met them when I did, and to see what they become, it's an extraordinary thing, and by far the most rewarding part of being involved.
Yeah, when I guest conduct and I happen to be in a town that a former youth orchestra student is there, I try to, catch up for lunch or coffee or even drinks, which never happened back then.
Of course not. That was certainly not allowed. Well, it was interesting because for the New York Youth Symphony, our age limit was actually 22. So we did have some undergraduates, and which was great for me because I was able to get some students from Juilliard and Manhattan School and NYU and all over the place to be part of it, which made my life in a lot of ways easier. But so I did have a couple of students that I suppose, at least legally, it could have been but of course I never did until we were gone.
Until you were out. No, it's just awesome to have that youth orchestra experience for students, even if they don't go into music. It's totally fine, but just to have, it's a safe zone, it's a safe environment for people who just love music and play an instrument to come and get together and spend a few hours.
It's amazing to see, like you said, how being able to work with and meet and spend time with people like them. I some students that really came in and were kind of very shy and clearly, socially not as comfortable around people, and to see them really blossom when they're able to just spend time with people like them, and to see them all come out of their shells the way some of them did was really remarkable. So
most definitely,
it's an incredible thing to see. And for us too, we were lucky enough, all our concerts were performed in Carnegie Hall.
Oh, fantastic.
And so, to give all those students a chance to, we did a Beethoven 9 in there and a Mahler 2 in there, and to be able to perform that repertoire, to give them the opportunities to do that in that space was incredible. So
just the way that you had an opportunity to conduct when you were 10, being in a youth orchestra in your town, did you have some young kids coming out of the program that wanted to become conductors and have an opportunity to conduct?
Well, we actually had a conducting program as part of the New York Youth Symphony umbrella. There was a conducting class that I ran that we did that met before rehearsal every Sunday. So yes, we actually did. Not only did we actually have a real avenue to provide to those students, but a lot of them, got involved, I think, because of that opportunity. And some of them are pursuing a conducting in some way. I have a couple of students that are now in college and we're doing it through there and have now even some of them graduated and are actually looking to. So we've created some competition for ourselves. But again, it's just remarkable to see so many of them form their interest there, and then to see what they've done on their own after that. And, it's been really incredible.
What we, as our career of music, is always about receiving and also giving back. And I'm so happy to hear that you were able to teach young students just the way that you were influenced. So that's
exactly. I feel very, very lucky that I was able to study with the people that I had the opportunity to study with. Almost all of them are now no longer with us. And so to be able to pass that on to a younger generation is was something that was very important to me, and it's great that I was already able to do it, so early on, and hopefully I'll be able to continue to.
That's wonderful. Tell us about your time with New York Philharmonic.
Where do I begin?
You just finished your term, right?
I did, about almost 2 years ago now. That's wild to think about. It's, and I'm sure you can. I think as an assistant anywhere, the wonderful thing about that experience is that you're able to just sort of see how an orchestra just operates day in and day out. And you're able to spend time with so many wonderful people and professionals, and to really see how they do their jobs well. And there's no better place, I think, than New York Philharmonic for me to have done that, and to sort of see how things really work behind the scenes, and to be able to spend so much time with Maestro Alan Gilbert, and to see how he had to navigate the day-to-day life as a music director of a major orchestra was, invaluable. What was interesting for me is the New York Philharmonic was my hometown orchestra.
Right.
The orchestra, I grew up about an hour from New York. It was the closest big time orchestra, and the one that I saw more than any other. And there were certainly plenty of people that I heard of, in the group long before I set foot in the building myself. And that was in some ways intimidating at first, but I think the most wonderful thing about being able to work there was that I was able to just meet all the people and spend time with all the musicians, and I got to know so many of them so well. A lot of the preconceived notions that I had, the New York Philharmonic has its reputation, and a lot of the things I had heard about people going into it turned out to be completely untrue, and I just got to meet so many wonderful people, spend time with them, learn from them, and develop relationships that I still have with many of them. And again, by far the best part of being there, which is being able to spend time with so many of them.
Yeah, it's like having your favorite sports team that you always grow up with, and then you always have your fans, and you have your favorite players, and you get older, and then all of a sudden you've become one of the players of your home team, and just a wonderful story, and a wonderful way it came about. It's just amazing how you always looked up to the New York Philharmonic, and then there you are standing in front of the New York Philharmonic. Like,
still can't believe it. Yeah, still can't let me up there, but yeah.
Well, of all the many concerts during your tenure there, what is a memorable performance that you have from your time at New York Phil?
Well, there was, I suppose, the dream and nightmare of every assistant conductor is the possibility of having to step in at a last minute's notice to for the conductor that evening to have to conduct a performance with very little preparation time. And that only happened to me once while I was there in 3 years, but it really happened to me. It was about right in the middle, about a year and a half into my time there, and during the dress rehearsal, and the break of the dress rehearsal, the conductor got very ill. Couldn't even continue the rehearsal, let alone the performance that night. So I had to finish the dress rehearsal, and then I had about 3 hours in between to mentally prepare myself for what was to come. And then I had to go out there and conduct the subscription concert that night. And then I did it again the next night, and the next night after that. But I still remember it. It was an all Tchaikovsky program.
Okay.
Francesca da Rimini, and then the Sixth Symphony. And the Francesca I got to do in the rehearsal dress rehearsal. So at least I got one shot at that before. But the symphony had already been done, the rehearsal, so that was blind. I had to get up there with having not done it with them at all, and just do it in the concert. And I'm pretty sure I blacked out at some point during the, during the performance. I don't know. I got out there and we did it, and everybody, it didn't fall apart, and we got through it, and it was a wild experience too. A lot of adrenaline, and like I said, it's like I said, it's sort of every conductor's dream and nightmare, because of course that's what we dream about. We want to get our shot to get up there and do it ourselves, but be careful what you wish for, because then you got to get up there and do it, with New York Times in the audience and all that stuff. So it was exhilarating, but I'm glad that I actually had a chance to do it again. The first night was, like I said, I barely remember it, but then I got the chance to do the same program the next night again. And that one, I think I really was able to sort of take in more and enjoy, and having already had one under my belt and everything like that. So it was a wild experience, but I certainly will never forget it.
Did you have your suit and your tails already at the Philharmonic?
It's funny because we are supposed to always have some concert clothes there in the event something happens, but you don't want to keep your best suit there because you're guest connecting other places.
Right. You need to
bring it back forward. Right. So you have your B suit, at the hall in case of emergency. Yeah, right, of course. Right. I mean, exactly. So I did actually go, because I had 3 hours. I was able to go home, get my good clothes, and bring them back.
Oh, I see.
and yeah, bring my A game at least. If I was at least going to look as nice as possible, no matter what. So
I'm very curious about that, because I've heard stories where like it was, someone had to step in like an hour before notice, and they didn't have their clothes. So what are you going to do? Oh.
No, it's tough. Like, again, we're all guest conducting places, so we're never just going to keep our best, tux or whatever we usually perform in, at the hall, just to gather dust.
Right.
So I had something there, and just in case, but I didn't end up using it.
Well, given the 3 hours, I'm glad that you were still human enough to think I got to look good.
No. I mean, I probably should have been studying the whole time. I had to take the 45 minutes of those 3 hours to go and bring it back, and then cram for the rest of it, for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. But I'm glad that you had that balance, though, because if you were just to be stuck in a dressing room for the 3 hours, you would go crazy. It's like all the things that would just build up in your head. And
of course, at that point, obviously, being able to at least go over everything, a little bit before I had to go out there was helpful. But it's not like I was going to learn it. And, either I knew it well enough beforehand or I didn't.
Exactly.
From what I remember, it all went well. And
I'm sure it did. It's amazing. Wonderful. Do you have a pre-concert ritual by any chance? Like,
it's funny. As I've been asked this question a couple times, and I really, the only thing that I could think of, I don't really do anything. Any stretches or anything really to help me perform. But I always have to put in a breath mint before I go on stage. I don't know why. I feel a lot better when I go out there with for my own sake. I don't think anybody else could notice, but just in case, I don't want to offend anybody in the front row, and I just feel much better with the so I always do before I go out on stage. I always just pop them just in case, and that's my only. Otherwise, I can't say anything. I don't have any studying rituals or any stretches or anything that I probably should be doing, but
unless you breathe really strongly, like the front row people are not going to smell your breath.
You never know. I think maybe I'm making this up, but at some point in time, somebody made a comment to me, even like in a rehearsal, and I just ever since, so just in case, don't want to give it. You don't want to give the musicians any reason to,
right,
to not want you back. So
now,
can't be too careful.
Now I know what to give you. Do you have a specific breath mint that you always have to use, or it doesn't really matter? No. But if you're not that picky.
No. As long as it's minty, I think I'll be fine.
Have you ever forgotten the mint, and did it mess up your game?
Oh God, I'm sure there's been times where I haven't had one. And not really. No, I was fine. I'm sure. But once you're out there, I don't think I didn't think about it at all. But going out there, I just feel better. At least if I'm starting on a fresh note. So what can I say?
That's so funny. Some people are saying, "Great story."
There you
go. Comment from Michael is Ravel were tasked with writing something that mirrored the planets, but for the seasons, he would have had a field day with that project. I would.
It's funny, that with that comment, because I always think of, especially the prelude that we played, the first movement of Tombeau as absolutely an autumnal sort of scene. I always think about the leaves sort of blowing in the wind or something like that whenever I hear it. So I certainly think he would have done a great job. Yeah.
Sorry to cover our faces because the question's so very long. Question about what is it like working with an avant-garde composer, and is there any challenges for that? And then Ayana Braun's refraction piece, wondering about your experience of that.
I think the great thing about performing contemporary music with living composers is that you really get to collaborate with them. Very, very often you're able, they're with you at the rehearsals and the performance, or you're at least able to talk to them, before, during, after the performances to really get their perspective. And it really is more of a workshopping experience all the way through. So, I honestly don't really feel as if like I approach, I don't know how you feel, but I don't really feel like I approach studying or learning a contemporary piece much differently than I do anything else. I think the process is really the same. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to conceptualize some things when a piece is new and you don't have any reference or anything like that. It can be a little bit more difficult, but when you have the composer there to ask any of the questions you might have, we actually have to make less decisions because
I know
that's not up to us.
I love when we do new works or contemporary works, and especially when the composer's there, because there are so many questions that I want to ask Ravel or Beethoven, but we can't. Like
I don't have their phone numbers as my teachers used to
text Mozart. A lot of hours would have been saved. But with the new works, it's just great because they're there, and then if we have a question, we just ask them. So I feel like I don't talk as much in new works because the mastermind is right behind us. Just ask them.
Absolutely, you're more likely to say something incorrect, honestly, than anything, especially if you have the source right there behind. So,
do you ever encounter those living composers, contemporary composers say, "No, just do it the way you feel," and I'm like, "No, let's just do it the way you feel."
Certainly, it's and I appreciate that they're as gracious as they are sometimes, that they do defer, and it's interesting in that as composers also on the other side of it, sometimes you're not. Maybe you had your own idea and concept of what you wanted when you wrote it, but then you hear it played a certain way, and you realize that whatever the musicians did was better than what you had even thought of. And so it really is it's a living sort of experience. It does sort of evolve as you go through the process, and it's a shame because this is nothing new. All of the great composers of the past did it the same way. They were constantly editing, making changes, revising. And then as soon as they were gone, that process obviously stopped and we're left with what was there at that moment. But they were constantly always revising when they had the opportunity to also. So it's important that we're doing that, and we're all doing that together to create the best product.
Specifically this piece called Refractions by Ayana Braun. What is the piece about?
It was one of the last year I actually went back to the Curtis Institute where I went to school, and every year there's a concert they do. Every composer has to write an orchestral piece and it's performed on a concert. There are 6 composers, so they all write I think it's like a 5 to 10 minute piece, and they're all rehearsed. It's a real performance, and it's actually a great thing. There are very few music schools out there that I think give the composers that kind of opportunity to really get an orchestral piece every year rehearsed well and performed. And you know, real quality. And that was one of the pieces that we did last year.
I see.
And it was I don't remember anything that was different in my approach to it. It was a kind of piece that was sort of very a lot of sort of little motivic cells sort of scattered through the orchestra, that kind of piece. But like I said, again, not really any different. I didn't approach it any differently than I would any other piece in the way that I learned it and tried to interpret it. And then, you know, the difference is that I had Ayana there to talk with and ask questions.
Which is the beauty of working with contemporary composers. So yeah,
absolutely.
Fantastic. With all of my guests on music today, we talk about current affairs, and the first thing
are there any?
First thing that I always touch upon is how the Black Lives Matter means to you and how it influences your musical activity as a musician. So tell us what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm the last person that should be speaking, you know, to this. But you know, I'm sure I won't say too much that hasn't already been said by some of the other guests. I mean, I think it's obvious that you know, for a while now, and for many different reasons through hundreds of years, we have been neglecting many different people, many different groups. And not representing them in the way we program and in many other ways in the industry. And you know, I think we can always do better. But I think, you know, it's something that we've been thinking about for a while now. And it's a shame that events like this have to happen for us to really perhaps do something about it. But you know, I hope that at least the good that can come out of something like this is that now there really is action being taken to make sure that minorities are really being represented in the field the way they should. And it's not an easy, quick problem to fix in any way. I think for me, a lot of it goes back into our education system, especially here in the US. Really, for a while now, we haven't, at least through the public school system, been able to really provide access to all students to the arts that really need it and want it. And I think a lot of the issues that we find stem from that. And I think we have to do a better job really starting from the beginning and making sure that every student, every young person, no matter where they are, where they come from, you know, has the opportunity, has the access to be able to, you know, learn, experience, perform in the arts in some way, and then, you know, really nurture them all the way through. And it's a problem that is going to take a lot of time. It's a generational thing, I think, that it's going to take to fix. And you know, there are already a lot of programs in New York. There's a harmony program that I was involved in when I was, you know, working with the Philharmonic that does just that goes into different schools and gives all the students music lessons and provides them instruments and gives them an outlet and really sort of nurtures them all the way through school. And it started, I don't exactly know when, I want to say about a decade ago. And so you're really starting to now see some of those students mature and graduate and become young adults. And hopefully that these kinds of programs will really help sort of change the landscape going forward. But, you know, obviously I think we can all do better.
Yes.
And helping, you know, represent everybody, you know, all the talented people out there, no matter who they are and where they come from and what they look like. And, you know, and even just sort of generally, I think for me in thinking about this whole thing, it's made me, I think we can all sort of respect the fact that we all have different experiences in life. We all have different perspectives in life. And we never quite know what somebody else has gone through or experienced. And we can never quite relate to it in the same way. And I think just to sort of always having an open mind about that and realizing that our life experience is our own and it's not the same as somebody else's, and to respect that somebody may have a different perspective or experience based on who they are and where they come from. It's important no matter what, you know, in any sort of facet of life. So like I said, I'm sure nothing that hasn't already been said.
No, but the way you speak of it is very very beautiful and very articulate. And I'm glad that you mentioned about education, because I think when we were in school, our history books in music, the music history books touched Scott Joplin, it touched maybe Duke Ellington, but there are
Maybe.
so many composers that it doesn't mention, like Florence Price, William Grant Still. Like at least I never, in my standard music history books, it never came across.
No,
So
certainly not in my experience in growing up. It's not something that I was really taught or learned about
yeah.
much. And so obviously, as far as the curriculum itself, we have to really revise it and do a better job and be more inclusive. And it's a shame too, in that the way our just social system worked for so many years. There are probably many musicians and composers out there that never even got the chance to present their work the
Right.
way the people we know about were given, and that's nothing we can do about that now, unfortunately. But I'm also just thinking about this arts funding, and when I was a student, at least I was a public school student, but most of the public schools had a decent arts program and music program, and anybody who wanted to play an instrument, had the ability to, had the opportunity to. And I know even in the places where I grew up, a lot of the budgets have been cut, and a lot of things have changed, and the programs aren't thriving in general for everybody, and it's a big problem, because we're only as good as our what we're doing, how we're teaching our young people.
I'm very thankful for the violinist Rachel Barton Pine founded. She has the foundation called the Music by Black Composers, and I wanted to share that to our viewers today, because what it does on that website is introduces us to a lot of the living composers of today, and all of the their works, and how to their websites and their sound
That's a great
files.
database. Yeah,
It's fantastic to have this, for us to be more educated and to be able to program, because us as conductors, we have the the ability to program and share the music to our audience, and it's totally our responsibility at this point. So
couldn't agree more with that. And we're certainly we can always do better, but we can definitely do better in that regard. And I like I said, if any good comes from this, I hope that we all will.
I think so too. The other current affair is, of course, COVID-19, and the question that I ask is that performing music has become such a routine activity for all of us for so many years, but then all of a sudden, because of this world crisis, performing in public has become extremely difficult. How has your attitude towards music and performing for an audience changed?
It's a great question, and I don't know if I can totally answer it yet. Again, I think what's been so difficult about this, outside of the fact that we can't perform, and performing is what we do and what we enjoy, and that's why we do it for a living. Outside of the obvious, I think what's been so unsettling for me, and I think a lot of my colleagues, is that we really just don't know how long this is going to last.
Right.
And how we're going to come back. I think if we had some better idea of the timeline and time frame, and if we sort of knew we had this time off, it would be a little bit easier to grapple with. But I think the uncertainty of it all, and not really knowing exactly how we're going to come out, we will come out of it, but how we're going to come out of it and what the landscape is going to look like of the industry when we do, makes it very difficult right now, because you can only really plan or do so much in the meantime. But at the same time, and again, this is something that I've been talking to a lot of my friends and colleagues about, so I'm interested how they felt about it also. In a weird way, it's been sort of nice to just sort of have some time to really sort of reset everything, recharge the batteries, and sort of take some time off. When you're working, the business can be very hectic, and I don't know how you feel, but often you get to a point where you sort of feel like you're always just cramming for the next engagement, the next gig, and you really never feel like you have enough time to sort of sit back and really learn and study and think about all this music the way we wish we could. And I think it's been sort of nice to just take a step back and take a deep breath, and everyone just sort of hit pause for a little bit. And I hope it actually will, again, not having the ability, the access to perform the way we're used to, it will sort of provide a newfound appreciation and enthusiasm for doing it once we are able to start doing it again. So in a weird way, again, the length of it and the uncertainty of it has been very difficult, but at the same time, being able to just take a step back and take a deep breath from it all, just for a little bit, I think will probably do a lot of us more good at the end of the day.
And we appreciate, the fact that we've taken so for granted that audience were always there at performances, and for it to all of a sudden go away, we are reminded the fact that we perform music for an audience.
And even just the ability to go and perform with a group of musicians on stage, something that we would have probably never thought that wouldn't have been possible, all of a sudden was taken away from us. And so, I really do think in a lot of ways it will provide a new appreciation for everybody once we're able to start doing it again. And I'm actually really interested to see, what sort of results we get once we come back, and to see how things have changed and how things may be different. But I think they will be different in a positive way, for sure.
Definitely. I want to make sure our viewers know where to reach you and see your activities. This on your website at joshuagersen.com, and
there he is. Yeah.
Here he is with his beard and everything.
It's for a while.
Yeah, and can check out his videos and contents, and then also Josh also has an Instagram page. So just want to make sure we show that, and you can follow him at JD Gersen.
There you go.
Oh, there we have it. Well, Josh, thank you so much for your time and sharing us your journey. And I'm glad that you're very safe with your family, and your family is safe. And
thanks a lot for having me. This has been great. It was it's just great to be conductors. We so very seldom get to just sort of chat like this and talk about what we're doing, because we're just all running all over the place and we're never in the same city at the same time. So it's been nice to do that, and glad you're doing well also. Where are you? You're in Tokyo?
Yes, I'm in Tokyo, and my wife and I are here, and the emergency has been lifted in Tokyo. So this week has been the first week that orchestras are doing concerts with audience. So we're hoping for the best that the numbers don't go back up again. But
sounds like you're doing a lot better over there than we are here. So
we are making music. So I've been moving my arms, and it's been 3 months since the last time I moved my arms. So it's
me too. So yes, you don't know how lucky you are.
Well, I'll make sure to take some breath mints the next performance or rehearsal I have.
Please think of me when you do.
I will. Well, for our viewers, thank you so much for watching, and JD, thank you so much for participating in music today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share this video. ありがとうございました。チャンネル登録、いいね、そしてこのビデオをぜひシェアしてください。